Hi, this is Nori from My Service Depot. Today we're going to take a look at the latest features added in version 99 of Smart Service, all regarding time tracking and how we can improve efficiency in your office for tracking billable times with Smart Service. Let's go ahead and take a look. So to cover these new features, we're going to go ahead and follow them in order. We'll go ahead and grab our devices and start there. So now that we're back in iFleet, we can go ahead and take a look at how this new update is going to affect our technicians. The first thing is, we'll go ahead and open up our iFleet dashboard. And you'll notice that when I clock in for the day, I no longer receive a prompt to confirm whether or not I'd like to clock in, which will remove a step from your process. Also, if you try to clock out while you have a job open, it's going to let you know that. It's going to say, hey, you have this job open, would you like to end it before you clock out? And of course, you'll have the option to say no, go back, finish whatever you need on the job, and then clock out later. Another couple neat features that we'll have in here, let's go ahead and head into a service. And the first one is, for those of you using additional times, when you go to add your timestamps for those additional times, you'll notice a couple steps have been removed for you as well. If I choose an employee from our employee list here, it's going to automatically populate with the correct payroll and service values for that employee. This is going to depend on your Smart Service employee setup, of course. But you'll notice here, if I change this to, let's say, another employee, or if I change the type maybe to travel, my items are going to change. That way I can enter my times, and that's really all you have to do. Pick out your times, we'll save them, and now I've added some extra timestamps. And of course we can repeat the process if you have any helpers going with you. Let's go ahead and say on this job, maybe I'll have someone working with me today. We'll go ahead and say that's Alex that's working with me. His values are filled out. Save them, add them on there. Another neat feature that relates to these timestamps is when you guys are adding your timestamps, you might want to make these times that you're working on this service billable to the customer. Well, that's not a problem. Instead of finalizing the job at the end, which of course most of you are familiar with doing, there's a little something extra you got to do now. You'd want to go up to your current status. So the feature that we're going to use now instead of the finalized job is the job complete timestamp. I want to go ahead and hit job complete first. That will go ahead and let iFleet know that we've added an end time for our service. And now those times that we spent working on the job for myself and my additional employees, if I go down to the job items window and tap this add time charges option, you'll see it will display all of the times that I've added to this job. On the left, we have check marks. If you mark those, you are selecting to make these items billable to the service. So I can make all of them billable. I can make just a couple of them billable. We'll notice that there's a combine by service item option in the bottom. If you have that on, any employees who are using the same service item, so all of my 3 times here are labor, any of the people using those items, it will combine it into one line item for the invoice. If I uncheck this, I would get 3 separate line items, one for each of these time values. I'll go ahead and keep that combined by service item checked, and when I'm done, I'll hit the done button in the top right. You'll notice it will add that line item for me, and it's already got the quantity all filled out. Of course, if any adjustments need to be made after the fact, you can always come in here. If you have an hour minimum you need to round up or something else. Once we've added our time charges to the job, we can go ahead and head down to the finalize job button and continue to finalize as normal. So our next step is heading back to the office, and let's see what iFleet's given us. I'll go ahead and open up the service we were working on in iFleet. If I head to the job items section, you'll notice our labor item that we had added is already in here for us. Now, the feature that we talked about, that add time charges from iFleet, if I unlock my job items, and I go into the exclamation plus symbol here for add, you'll notice I have the same add time charges window available here. I can go ahead and open this up, and within this window, here are my times. But you'll notice on the right hand side, I have the build box marked. That build box means that iFleet has already added these times as billable items to the service. So if I try to add them again, which I'd usually do by checking this, it'll give me a warning and say, hey, these are already added as billable items. If you'd like to change them, go ahead and mark them as unbilled. So if I wanted to do that, go ahead and close out. I'd want to get rid of my item. back into our window, mark any items as unbilled, and of course I can make time adjustments. I still have my combined by service item option, but that same feature we use in iFleet, I can mark the check marks on the left, hit save, and you notice I can add them just as we did from the field. So if you want your office staff to go ahead and control the billing of items and labor, you can have that happen. Or if you want the field to go ahead and take a little bit more initiative and do all that on their own and have the office review their information, that's of course a possibility also. I'm sure many of you who are concerned about time tracking remember the manually post time screen available in the office. We have since replaced that option with the post timesheet screen. It's a new screen, it's got a complete redesign, and it's got a lot of great new features to help you track and correct times if you needed. Let's go ahead and take a look. So we'll go ahead and go over to the office screen, and from the office screen we'll take a look at post timesheets, formerly known as manually post times. You'll notice the screen has received a complete redesign, and if we look around in here, we still have our filter options. Do you want to look at one single employee, or do you want to look at all employees? A new option, you have the group by field. This will be especially helpful if you're working on larger projects or jobs where you have at least maybe 2 or more technicians on the service. You can either group the times by the employee who entered them, and you see it'll bring up my times. So these are all Cynthia, these are all Jamie, and it's just going Monday, Tuesday, so on and so forth. But for those larger projects, we have the option to group by job, which means all times tied to the service, whether it's for Cynthia, me, or Jamie, will all be put in a block. So these are all the same services, and I can see, okay, this person worked on this job for that long, this other person also worked on that job, and I can correct all the time values per service instead of per employee per day. Another great feature we've added in here is the date ranges. This will let you select a quick date range, such as today, if I want to see times entered for my technicians today, or if you wanted to see it for yesterday, this week, last week, so on and so forth. You also have the option to do all unposted jobs, which will show you anything that we haven't closed out already. So here's some times from a little while ago that we can see. We also have the option to say a custom date range, and as the previous screen had, you can select your dates from here. I'll go ahead and reset mine for the values today, and let's go ahead and go back to our group by employee. The rest of the screen has received some updates as well. You'll notice that it has the day, the start and end time, the employee, and the service. On the right, we will have the different types of time associated with that service. So you can see I have travel, production, the different services. I'll have the scheduled information, so you can see, okay, when did the tech work over here on the left? When did we schedule for on the right? So if you have a discrepancy where you scheduled them an hour and it looks like the job took 4, we might want to ask the technician, hey, why did this take so long? What happened on this service that we need to know about? Is there something we need to do? We'll be able to see the payroll and service items, if there is one, defined with that job. If we do need to fix any of these times, you'll notice to the right there are edit symbols. You can just go and click on one of those. It'll open up. And since we are grouped by employee, it's going to show me time entries by employee. You'll notice if I am grouped by job, it's going to show me time entries for that job. So the rest of the screens available here do respect your choice in grouping. But we can take a look here. So here's our time that it was added by the field. We can see Alex's timestamps from iFleet here. If we need to correct one, of course we can click on one of these time clocks, or we could mess with some of the other values in here. But if I'd like to add times, that's when I'm going to hit the add button up here, and this is a new thing. You can now add any kind of time that you need into the timesheet screen. This would include things like clock in and clock out values, lunches, breaks, and of course your standard travel, production, and other times. But I could come in here and say, well, he didn't add a travel time to that job, it looks like, so maybe I want to add one for the service. Easy enough. What were his times? We have a new date picker available here. It'll come up with the current time, and of course you can come in here and you can just type in whatever you need. So I could say he started maybe at 6:50 a.m. or p.m. Go ahead and add it in, and it'll let me continue to add things as I need to. Then we can define which employee was it, because of course I can switch to a different employee. There might be multiple people working on this service. What kind of time we're talking about? Well, he needed that travel value. Well, what's his payroll? Let's go ahead and add that. Service item, are we charging for the time traveled? I'm going to say no. We can go ahead and close out. So now you see I've added some times to his day for him, even though he forgot to do so in the field. You'll also notice that with these times in this window and also the times in the previous window, we have a billed and posted column. The billed time matches our job items section where we marked items as billable earlier. If these service items have been marked as billable items, you'll see that box is checked. If the invoice associated with these times has been posted to QuickBooks, you will see the posted box checked. So go ahead and close out of that. And now I've got some travel times for him. I'd want to go through and review each of my times, make sure all the times are correct. When we're done, we have the option of clicking the Post All button down here at the bottom. Now remember, it's going to post your job or your times in the current view, so make sure to check all of them. Then you can hit Post All. It'll tell you I'm going to post times for this day. I'll say yes. That has armed the feature, and then from there, if we click Post All again, it will send all those times over to QuickBooks. And once we've posted our times over to QuickBooks successfully, we'll get this message that Smart Service is letting us know, hey, the times have been sent over, and they're now available on the QuickBooks timesheet for payroll and or billable items. Another great feature that a lot of you would use and a lot of you probably wanted some updates to would be the Enter Completed Work Orders screen. That same screen will still be available, but with some great new features. Of course, it's in the same place as the Office tab. This time, it'll be labeled Post Work Orders or whatever your custom terminology that you chose in Setup would be. So in Setup, if you chose Service Tickets, it'll say Post Service Tickets. Let's go ahead and take a look. From the Office, we'll go ahead and take a look at Post Service Tickets. So you notice there's a lot of new features in here as well. Of course, you still have the classic options to filter by an employee, filter by a date range. This does include the post timesheet style date ranges where we have today, yesterday, all unposted jobs, and of course a custom date. Within here, we can also filter the dates by the date completed, and that's the date that iFleet has finalized the service, or the date scheduled. So if you're not using iFleet for these groups of people, or somebody isn't using iFleet, didn't put things in iFleet, we can go ahead and use the date scheduled. And of course, if you are doing it by date scheduled, you'll notice a new feature has appeared up here, include incomplete jobs. For those of you that are using iFleet, you will probably remember you had to click the include completed jobs only. That option has now been flipped, so it will include finalized jobs by default. If you would like to see jobs that are not finalized, currently in progress, or those technicians are not using iFleet, you can click the include incomplete jobs section, which you see shows significantly more services. But let's go ahead and take a look at things that iFleet has finalized. Let's say yesterday, we could look at that, or we could take a look at today very easily. Some other options here, we have the QuickBooks options all grouped into one nice category. Of course, you'll still have your standard fields like you want to push this over as pending, to be emailed, or to be printed from QuickBooks. If you want to post jobs to the QuickBooks timesheet at this step instead of using the manually post times, that's totally fine as well. We just have this option checked if needed. If you have posted your times using manually post times, just go ahead and leave that option unchecked. Another great feature is how we're handling the invoice dates sent over to QuickBooks. Beforehand, you'd post over an invoice date, but it would be based off the scheduling date, and you might have scheduled that job a month ago. It's preventative maintenance. Well, I don't want that to be the invoice date because that's inaccurate. Well, now you have different options for your invoice date. If you click in this box, you can choose the completed date, of course the date finalized, the scheduled date as it was before version 99, or you can choose a custom date and enter your custom date to the right. Another large feature that everyone should be aware of is the Do Not Post Jobs feature. You previously remember the Post Jobs to QuickBooks button that we had in here. That setting has also been flipped. The Do Not Post Jobs is essentially the opposite of that. If this box is checked, you will not receive any invoices for any services sent over to QuickBooks until that box is unchecked. It's basically a flip of your old setting. So be careful with that one. If you do check this box, it will be checked for all in the office, and it will remain that way unless you fix it. So, I want to take a quick look at that, make sure that is turned off, unless of course we don't need an invoice for the service at QuickBooks, maybe we're fixing some older jobs that are left around in the database. We can also take a look at how the jobs are laid out down here. You'll notice that instead of the edit button to open up a service, I have these blue hypertexts. If I click on one of these, it will open up that service for me. Also, any job exceptions added by iFleet will appear at the bottom in red. This is to get your attention a little bit better. We'll still have the same options if you need to add notes or add a payment or anything else. You'll be able to see the customer's name, the type of service performed. Of course, you can mark those as completed, canceled, or skipped. See our employee. Some of my favorite features added in here are the dates scheduled, so that's from the calendar. The scheduled times, you can see those still. The completed section, so this is when iFleet finalized the job, and the total sum of production times on the job. Now, if you're pausing and resuming a job, it's going to count off of whatever the pause and resume times were individually, add those all up to equal this number. So this is the total amount of production spent, regardless of what employee it was on this service. So you can go ahead and take a look and see, okay, looks like I gave him a couple hours. Well, he got that done really quickly. Or, I gave him a little bit of time here and it took him about twice as long as I thought it would. We can go ahead and correct any of those values. All you have to do is click on the blue hypertext, and it opens up that same time entries by job window. We can correct any values, and of course we can add values as well. So it's really become an all-in-one screen here. And once we have everything taken care of, as usual, we can either hit the post buttons to the right, or we can come down and use the post all feature to post all jobs within the current view over to QuickBooks. Also, after we visited our job items, if we want to see when this job was completed by iFleet, we can always head over to the Scheduling tab, where you'll see another great new feature. We now have the scheduled date, of course, the one that you scheduled the job for, and below that we have the completed date. This is when iFleet finalized the job. So we can come down here and see, okay, looks like you got that job done on the same day that we scheduled it. Good. Everything's taken care of. Another great feature added for your job records is what happens when you complete the job. So if I complete this service, post it over to QuickBooks, and let's say a little bit later we want to come back and look at some history for this customer. When I go to the history record created under the customer for this service, we have a new tab added in here called Job Times, which will display any times that were available on that job. So if we need to see how long this job took the last few times we were out here, we can always come back in here and run a report for this information to see how long did Nori spend on this job last time, how long did it take him to get there. We can go ahead and schedule the job accordingly based off of that total time information or the individual timestamps that were entered by the employee on that service. As a quick access feature added to the scheduler, if you need to review employee times directly from the calendar, of course you can do so. A lot of you were right-clicking and probably heading over to the View Time Details window. You'll notice that as our time tracking abilities have improved, as is this window. If I go to View Time Details now, it's no longer the tiny window where you can put in one production value and one travel value. We now have the option to view all times added by all employees to the service, and of course to correct or to add more times by clicking the Add button, as we'll see in the Post Timesheet screen. So we can come in here, and I can add more times to my service. For those of you who like to run reports in Smart Service, all of these time tracking features we're talking about today have been added to that report section. So if you go to run some of your older time tracking reports from version 98, they should still work with the new features in version 99. So another interesting feature that we've added here is in the Mobile Workforce tab. If you're trying to look at what jobs your employee has on their device, you usually head over to the Workforce Summary and click on one of the employees. You'll notice now that when I click on one of these employees' names, we've added some new fields in this window. We have the actual job timestamps field. This will show all travel times and job times associated with this service. What it's going to show us here is whatever the full value of the timestamps are, and then the total. And that total, even if you're pausing the job, resuming the job, take a lunch or coming back to the job, this is going to be the total amount of travel values associated with the service, regardless of the employee. It's whatever timestamps are entered on this service. And of course the total job time as in production. Also, for those companies that are using assets in Smart Service, remember an asset would be something that we are renting out to the customer, for example, or let's say the company vehicles that you are taking to the site. We've added new fields to the fillable form fields list, which is of course available on the online manual. These new fields will be for the asset model and serial number if you'd like those to appear on any custom documents you've created or had us create for you. So we'll head over to www.smartservice.com/wiki. And of course, there are a number of different features on here. If you're just getting started with the program, you can take a look at the Quick Start Guide to see how you would usually do a typical day. There's different features as well for, well, do you want to see which side of the program this is? Do you have any questions about these? There's a whole list of information about each feature available. What we're looking for is the fillable form fields list. We'll head over to the top right-hand corner where there's a search bar. And for this example, we'll go ahead and type in form and hit enter. This will bring up all relevant matches to the word form on the online manual. And you'll see our top two matches are the field test form itself and how to integrate your field test form with iFleet. Let's go ahead and click on the field test form section. You'll see a brief description about how forms are handled in iFleet, whether or not you'd like us to create one for you or if you'd like to create one yourself, with some instructions there. And of course, we had the fillable field test forms available for both iFleet and Routzy. We'll go ahead and take a look at the iFleet form. And you can see here we have all of the field codes designed for fillable PDFs. And of course, if you would like to save a copy, you can always head up here, hit your save button, or print it out. Also, if you're just now getting started with Adobe Acrobat DC, or you're getting started with your forms in general and just want some more information about them, this form here, if you download it and email it to your device using the descriptions in the form integration page, this is also a fillable form, so you can go ahead and take a look at what a fillable form does, how would that be beneficial to my company. And that'll do it for the latest features added in version 99 of Smart Service, which of course is all about time tracking. If you would like to receive more information about Update 99 or grab a copy of the update, feel free to visit www.smartservice.com/updates.